Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 842B, and today's date is December 14th, 2015, and the title of the episode is Turkey is Now Being Used as the Spark to Kick Off World War III. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, over the past week, we know that the government officials were out in Paris talking about global warming, trying to tax the people, and basically they spent millions of dollars, spread a lot of pollution, flying in their private jets over to Paris. But out of all of this, they keep hitting us with things like 97% of the world's scientists supposedly believe in catastrophic global warming. And this whole thing requires massive government intervention. And out of the Natural News, he breaks down basically where this 97% consensus of scientists came from. And the percentage derives from a survey conducted for a thesis by M.R.K. Zimmerman. The survey was a 2-question online questionnaire sent to about 10,200 or so Earth scientists, of whom 3,000 responded. Of the responding scientists, 96.2% came from North America. Only 6.2% came from Canada. So the United States is overrepresented even within the North American sample. 9% of U.S. respondents are from California. So California is overrepresented within not just the U.S. sample. It has over twice as large a share as the sample as Europe, Asia, Australia, the Pacific, Latin America, Africa combined. Of the 10% of non-U.S. respondents, Canada has 62%. Not content with such a distorted sample, the researchers then selected 79 of their sample and declared them experts. Of those 79, 2 were excluded from a second supplementary questionnaire, so they have 75 out of 77 made it through the final round, and 97.4% were found to agree with the consensus. That's where the 97% comes from. So a couple of dozen California scientists can determine the consensus of the world. Out of all the hundreds of thousands of scientists in the world, only 75 of them were selected to count for the climate change survey. Well, as we can see, this whole thing is completely fake, phony, and false. Just like everything else the government talks about, basically lies about, this is just another lie in their cap. And they continually lie to the people. We know that San Bernardino was a complete false flag. The witnesses continually say there were 3 white men in military fatigues, carrying military-styled weapons. And we can see whatever agenda they had, gun control, terrorism, it all got confused. And this is why they're continually pushing the story right now. But what's very interesting about this is that the FBI is still out there and still pushing encryption, and they're saying that encryption played a role in San Bernardino attacks. And there were 2 stories that came out. One which says the Fed challenged by encrypted devices on San Bernardino attackers. And another one, lawmakers, no evidence San Bernardino shooters used encryption. Now, the first story, the one claiming that San Bernardino attackers had encryption, actually came out before the second story saying they did not. It appears the same anonymous senior U.S. official who were whispering in ABC's ear were doing the same to CBS, because all of a sudden they posted a ridiculously vague tweet without any follow-up story, any research, or anything else. And what they wrote, and what they tweeted, I should say, new investigators find levels of built-in encryption in San Bernardino shooters' phones. And this came from senior law enforcement officials. tells CBS News. So let me read that again. New, investigators find levels of built-in encryption in San Bernardino shooter's phones. Well, when you first hear it, you say, yeah, whoa, hey. And then this spread across to all the news agencies, and they just ran with it without any type of research or anything like that. But when you look into this and look at the phrase built in, well, that's very vague because all of our phones have built-in encryption. Think about it for a second. Every phone and computing device currently sold in the U.S. has levels of built-in encryption. If they didn't, criminals would be able to easily intercept your calls and everything else. So every phone is built in. This story is completely fake. It's phony. It's misleading. But they do this to convince you that these people are using encryption because what they really want is you to give up your rights and allow them into your email, to your tweets, to your phone calls, to your Facebook page, you name it. They want access. And every single person needs to say, you know something? I'm supporting my rights. You don't have the right to spy on me. So guess what? I'm not using Google for my searches. I'm going to be using Start Page. And I'm going to use the proxies there so you can't track my location. I'm going to use an email encryption service where you can't get my email. I'm going to protect my phone, my iPad, my credit cards with the RFID chip in them. I'm going to protect my real ID, which is my license, which everyone will soon most likely get because DHS is pushing this all across the country where they will have RFID chips in. I will use some type of device to block the signal. You can use blockitpocket.com. These are sleeves where you can slide your credit card, your license into them. You can slide your phone into them. They're interwoven with silver, copper. It blocks the signal so nobody can track you. On my site, if you scroll down a little bit on the right-hand side, there's open source code for Pi encryption. You can use this to encrypt messages. But we have to reinforce our rights. Because what the government is doing right now, they're trying to have the corporations now spy on the American people and transfer that information over to the government using CISA. They will not hold the corporations liable for the information they pass to the government. And how are they trying to get this passed? Well, it looks like sources that are close to the legislative negotiations, they have indicated there's a final version of the CISA bill. And it's been gutted of all the privacy protections. And it has been added to the omnibus, the must-pass budget bill that Congress is expected to take up this coming week. So they're trying to hide it in the budget bill. Now, Obama has said many, many times that he would veto this type of bill if it came across his desk. Let's see if he's telling the truth or he's lying. Because if it does pass his desk, he should veto it, correct? Just like he was going to reform the NSA, which never happened. So let's see what happens when this bill passes his desk. Or does he sign it in the middle of the night when no one's around, no one's going to be talking about it, and it's buried in this huge budget bill? I'm going to go with that scenario. So right now out in Ukraine, Ukraine's economy has completely hit rock bottom. They are set to contract by 12% this year. Inflation is going to reach 50%. Thank you, the United States. Thank you, central bankers. They went into a country, had a coup d'etat, overthrew the government, put in a puppet government, put them into a civil war, and destroyed the economy. Wow. Look at Iraq. Look at Libya. Look at Lebanon. Look at Yemen. It all looks familiar. And we can see they need to get back their manufacturing, their coal production, which is in the southeastern area. They want the ports back in Crimea. They are getting ready for a major offensive. They have nothing to lose because right now they don't have control over the gas pipelines in this country. Russia's trying to divert all the gas away from this country. This is what they thought they were going to have. This is why Biden put his son on the board of directors. But the entire thing is falling apart. Now, Italy, along with France, is saying that they should look at the sanctions against Russia once again. And they're saying that Russia needs to stick to the Minsk deal and they should make an assessment. Well, I don't know how far this is going to get. I don't know if it's going to work. We know the European economies are completely hurting because of this. But Italy called on the EU member states to debate the extension of the economic restrictions rather than simply automatically prolong them for another 6 months, which they should. And we can see Russia created the Minsk I, the Minsk II agreement. They're following it. And the part of the country that's not following it is Kiev. But there's no penalties on Kiev when they don't follow it. Now, the U.S. Navy just released their unstoppable warship. And this new warship, this littoral combat ship, the newest Freedom-class littoral combat ship, the USS Milwaukee, broke down. It turns out that the Milwaukee is basically stoppable because they found metal debris which accumulated in the lube oil filter, and the vessel apparently completely came to a screeching halt and had to be towed into port. And if this is any sign of what the new technology and the new warships that are coming out, this next war, the United States has absolutely no chance whatsoever. And when I talk about the United States, I'm not talking about the people in the country, and that goes with any country. I am talking about the governments. I am a supporter of the people, the rights of the people, the Constitution, anything the government does to support the people. If the government is not supporting us, I am not for them. Because the government is put into place, because we elected them to go into this position, to support we the people. And we can see at this point, the government doesn't report to we the people. They report to central bankers, corporations, and other foreign governments. So when I talk about each one or any country, I'm talking about the governments in particular, just to clear that up. Now, out in Yemen, Saudi Arabia, which is the proxy army for the United States, they have been bombing Yemen schools where there's children. And this is coming from a rights group saying that 34% of the children in the country have not gone to school since the conflict began. The airstrikes, in some cases, appear to have been directed and targeted at the schools. And there's about 6,500 children in Yemen who can't go to school, and a lot of them are injured. A lot of them have passed away. And we can see that all of this is being done to make the people in Yemen say, I give, please bring in the puppet government, we'll never do this again. But this is not what's happening. The Houthis are fighting, the people are getting angry, and right now they have proposed a ceasefire to bring in humanitarian aid and to assist those that are suffering. And we've seen this before. And as soon as it was over, they started the bombing again. Actually, during the ceasefire, they were bombing. Actually, they weren't letting in humanitarian aid in through some of the ports. So we'll have to see how this works out. We'll have to see if the people actually get humanitarian aid, because we know time is running out. Now, Russia is saying that the U.S. failed to prevent Turkey from downing a Russian jet because they signed an agreement, the two countries, the U.S. and Russia. It was a memorandum on ensuring the safety of military aviation flights in Syria. And this went to the coalition forces, and Turkey is part of the coalition forces. And the U.S. did absolutely nothing to prevent this from occurring. which is true because they wanted it to happen, because they're trying to spark World War III. And they're doing whatever they possibly can to do this. Now, we know that Turkey has been caught smuggling oil through Iraq and Syria up into Turkey. We know that Erdogan's son, and I've been pronouncing his name wrong, it's not Erdogan, it's Erdogan. And I thank you to one of the listeners that helped me with this. The G is silent, and I will now pronounce his name correctly. And basically his son, Bilal, was orchestrating all of this. And right now, U.S. and Turkey have been caught covering up the ISIS oil trade. And we can see right now that they're in violation of UN Resolution 2199, which states banning financing of the terrorist organization. And basically what this means is the Resolution 2199, adopted on our initiative in February, countries are obliged to provide information about financing terrorists to the Security Council if they have such information. That means the Americans had to provide such information, and of course Turkey, which should have been reported as illegal oil trade, but they didn't do it. Why? Because they're in charge of all of this. That's why. They've been using this oil to fund the operation of the Islamic State. And now we've learned that Turkey is the main provider of the sarin gas in Syria. They are complicit in the smuggling of banned chemical weapons. And of course, Assad was blamed for this. So, coming out of the Turkish Republican People's Party, CHP, the opposition member Erdogan Erdem accused Ankara of covering up a major war crime, likely directed at high-level involvement in smuggling materials used to make deadly sarin gas to the Islamic State and other terrorists. Syria's government had nothing to do with the sarin gas episode, but it was blamed on them so they can try to bring in military assets and equipment and basically have an air force to be used as the Free Syrian Army Air Force to bomb certain areas to bring them closer to removing Assad. But that didn't work out in 2013. The U.S. government, central bankers couldn't get any traction from the people. The people didn't want to go into Syria whatsoever. And basically they had to go with Putin, who said, listen, if we get rid of the chemical weapons, will you be satisfied with this? And they said, okay, let's do this. But their goal was always the same, and that was to remove Assad. And right now we're seeing that there's data in this new indictment against Ankara where chemical weapon materials are being brought to Turkey and being put together in Syrian camps of the Islamic State, which was known as Iraqi Al-Qaeda during that time. There are also things that they've detected, things like phone records, which they have recordings of this shipment like, don't worry about the border, we'll take care of it. And we also see the bureaucracy is being used. The phone recordings in this indictment showed all the details from how the shipment was going to be made to how it was prepared, from the content of the labs to the source of the materials. The materials to make sarin gas and perhaps other toxic chemicals moved freely cross-border from Turkey to Syria, and Erdogan indicated a high-level regime cover-up on all of this. Toxic chemicals were purchased from Europe. U.S.-led Western countries should question themselves about these relations. Western sources know very well who carried out the sarin gas attack in Syria. So what we're seeing right now is all of this is starting to really fall apart. Right now, we have documentation, photos, satellite photos, documented evidence that oil is being smuggled from Turkey into, smuggled from Syria and Iraq into Turkey. Now we hear that sarin gas is coming from Turkey into Syria to be used to be blamed on Assad. All of this is starting to fall apart right now. And this is going to make it very difficult for the United States government and the central bankers. Because as this continually falls apart, the world is going to wake up to this. And before this happens, the United States government, the central bankers, are going to push a major event because they need a war. They need everyone on the same page. This economy is collapsing. The Fed now is at a crossroads. The U.S. government is at a crossroads. And we can see already everything is in motion. Everything is in motion to push this next event. This next event is going to be horrific. This next event, they're going to have to go all out to convince the entire world that we need to go to war. And it's not going to be a little gun battle. It's not going to be just a cyber attack. It's going to be physical, chemical, dirty nuke. It will be cyber attack. They need to bring the world together. I should say the private Western Central Bank world together to go off and fight in this next war. This is what they are planning. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.